Good. Well, welcome. Right, we're officially getting started. It's actually bang on 5 o'clock. That's GMT. So those of you who are joining us as we speak, if you could very kindly introduce yourselves in the chat. I can see Daniel's is very enthusiastic. He's already there. Welcome, Daniel. Delighted you've been able to join us today. And we can see more people logging in, but you haven't said hello yet, so we're not sure who you are. But just to introduce yourselves in the chat, and it'd be great to go from there. So in terms of the session today, Michael came up with a great topic. I absolutely love it. Previously, Michael did a session for us. It was 3 weeks into COVID, and this is shortly after Chris and I had a discussion, and we said, look, we've got this horrible scenario coming up on this that we all are well aware of now. And I think Chris and I just felt it was a really good time to give back. And we spoke to Michael roughly at the same time. Michael, you were a very keen volunteer for the third show. I think it's number 3. I think we're up to episode 36 now. So that's quite something. So, and the previous session was on how to take on the reptilian part of your brain and win. Today's topic, which I get really interested to hear about, is remove the doing to make the impossible possible. And I thought it was only me that came up with oxymorons. And actually, I've come to the conclusion Michael quite likes them as well. So thanks for that. Sorry. Yeah, and just also to welcome a couple of other people, several other people joining us. We've got Alex Rinn, who's joined us today. Welcome, Alex. If you come in via the community group, can you just put your name in there, because it's come up on our side as Facebook user, so we don't actually know who you are. So if you come in via the community group, just put your name at the bottom of the message so we know who you are. But welcome, whoever that is. Tom, nice to see you. Obviously, no snow in Cyprus, I assume. And Charlotte, yeah. So Argyle, how far is Argyle from you? As a point of interest, in fact. Michael, we got you back. How far is Argyle from you, Michael?
Argyle is the region, it's the area. Yes, we're in Argyle. So sort of smack bang. Yeah. Argyle is the sort of region. Highlands, Argyle. Yes.
Yeah, excellent. So I didn't realise potentially quite so close to each other. So in terms of what would be really good, it's just to reiterate what we normally discuss at this point, is it'd be really good if you could all introduce yourselves in the chat, indicate what you're really passionate about. It's not about self-promotion, so please don't put sort of company names or web links in there. It's all about engagement, encouraging discussion, and do come on with lots of questions, because Michael told me he loves difficult questions. And tell us why you do what you do, and how you like to make a difference. And yeah, just go with the flow. And a little bit of a quick introduction from me, and then we'll come on to Chris and Muriel and Michael, of course. I founded Business Growth Bureau about 6.5 years ago. Very passionate in helping business to grow, and in particular, building on the importance of circular relationships. I'd like to feel that it's not just a win-win, but what you do is you look at all the people who you sort of work with, look at how you can add value. So whether they're suppliers, customers, clients, investors, associates, and also, of course, your own team and staff and so on. Think of a way of making everyone feel good about working with you, and the other way around. And what I've found is you can achieve amazing things just by being there for people when they need your help and support. Chris, do you want to share us a little bit about yourself, what you're really passionate about?
Yeah, sure. Chris Cooper. I help to elevate the performance of leaders, teams, and build highly engaged workplaces. And I think my real passion at the moment is about elevating leadership to bring more unification rather than division around the world. And I seem to be spending a lot of time at the moment connecting with all sorts of thought leaders and experts around the globe who have also got a similar passion at the moment, and bringing some of those people together for quite amazing conversations. So that seems to be very, very topical at the moment, as well as I seem to be spending a lot of time with people at the moment who are just wanting to understand their why right now, on why I'm here and what's my purpose. So I have sort of methodology and how does that link into my business purpose, because they're really into deep reflection at the minute. So that's a little bit about what I'm passionate about. It's elevating leadership at the moment. We've got to step up and be we have a lot of intelligence as a human race, but we don't utilize wisdom enough.
Yeah, no, quite. And I've seen in firsthand Chris, you have worked with different clients, and I know what a difference you make to them. So obviously delighted. Thank you very much for agreeing in a very mad form to co-host the show with me, started from March this year. So Michael, we'll come to you in just a second, but Miro, just before we come over to Michael, just tell us a bit about what you're really passionate about.
Hello everyone, I hope you're all well. Yeah, I really enjoy working with people and understanding their needs and trying to help them to succeed in whatever they're doing, whether it's business or their private lives, but I just get a buzz from the relationship with them.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much. Now, Michael, just a little bit of an introduction into you. Michael, I've got massive respect for. We both got to know each other about 4.5 years ago. Michael, was it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I remember our first meeting. Actually, it was a place called Brand Exchange near Cannon Street. I'll try and bring Michael in again. I think we've lost him, but hopefully he'll come back. And basically, at the time, he just sold the interests in a franchise, and he basically wanted a new way of bringing in clients. Obviously, a lot of the existing clients had to stay within that business, but that discussion led on to great things. Michael became a much valued client, and over the last few years has become also a good friend as well, just like Chris has become. And I think what's really exciting is you've got some really good plans for next year, Michael, haven't you? And delighted that you're going to be working with us again, and the other way around in terms of bringing new opportunities through. So do reach out for Michael. I think Michael is very smart as well, because although he's got this very smooth, silky tongue that most people would die for, I think the only person who comes close to Michael, as far as that's concerned, is Chris. You could listen to Chris all night long. He just soothes you into feeling very relaxed and chilled. And Michael, you're definitely one of those, aren't you? So, but the other side of it is you're very smart in business, being able to repackage yourself so you serve some of the top clients, and obviously people pay you appropriately for your provision. And obviously very keen here to learn some great insights. So Michael, obviously these are the points we plan to discuss today, and we just lost Michael again. But some of these are the points we plan to talk about today, and it's very much learning about how to communicate to yourself to massively achieve massively improved business performance, anti-hijacking techniques, i.e. dealing with the part of your brain which is getting your own way, introduction to the three brains, understanding how to boost your belief system. Right. So Michael, we've got you back.
Apologies, guys. I will keep connecting back. I don't know. Obviously, the weather's bad, but that's fine. So we'll bat on. Yeah,
no, absolutely brilliant. If Michael does drop out, well, Chris and I, between us, will do our best. Fortunately, Chris is very experienced in the field as well, I'm sure. But Michael, just keep on coming in as we'll try and bring you in as best as we can.
That's fine.
Yeah. So let's remove the slide, and if Miro and Chris, if it's all right for you, just to move you backstage a little bit for a few minutes. And what we'll do is just get you in the right way. That's perfect. And so I think what would be really good, Michael, could you just introduce yourself a little bit? Obviously, I've given a bit of intro, but it'd be really nice to hear, how we got to know each other, how you like to make a difference. Perhaps go from there, and we'll perhaps go through some of these points, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem at all. Hi, guys. Hi, everyone who's listening. Apologies about my internet connection. Met Rupert, as Rupert said, a number of years ago. I'm always interested in connecting with people who want to look at how they can do things differently, faster, quicker. I'm amazed that with the technological advances, the changes that have gone on in the world, how salespeople and those who communicate really, I don't think have really kept up as much with the times. I've got some anecdotal stories, which I'll tell you with some of my clients, where I spend my life challenging them to prove that their thinking, the changes that they are trying to adopt, especially through COVID, really probably haven't delivered what they expected. And in fact, my most unpopular thing today was telling a company that they should dump all their managers and save several £1 million because the managers were ill-equipped to actually lead and develop the teams. That was an interesting discussion today at senior level, but it was taken on board with a good amount of curiosity and wow. So maybe I'll share some of those views with you tonight, not from a negative point of view, but we have a responsibility, all of us, to continuously develop and grow. And I'm really interested in the psychological understanding of how we think, how we behave. And that's how Rupert and I sort of got together initially, because I wanted to reach out and get into more clients. I didn't really want to write a book, being dyslexic, and probably don't have a very, very pretty face, so I didn't think TV was going to be very good for me either. So Rupert was the next best thing to see if we could use his technologies to create a better LinkedIn proposition. So yeah, I've been delighted to come on whenever people would want to listen to what I've got to say, and Rupert's been the antidote, the connection for that. So here I am, and it's open, it's honest, it's what I do for a living, and hopefully you get something out of it.
Yeah, no, lovely. I must admit, Michael, I don't know whether you saw it, but I did take the Michael out of you. Sorry to use the pun.
Everyone does.
Yeah, exactly. But out of an email that I sent this morning, I'm not sure you saw it, but there was I did touch on the story you told me about Putin. Email. Yeah. I've got a picture of Putin in the email riding bare-chested and horseback. Yeah. I'm sure you probably prefer not to join him on that, I'd imagine. But
I better not. I value my life.
How did you get into that relationship? Because that must have been a very tough call, both potentially as a client, but also how did that happen?
It started with a Finnish connection, which I've had for years, and they were looking for. They really were looking for magic. The company was effectively on the brink of being either going under or being bought out. And the individual had come on my golf workshop where I showed people how to drive a golf ball, at great effectiveness, blindfold, achieving 250, 280 meters with somebody who never played golf, and they were gobsmacked. And bear in mind, I don't play golf myself. So they then wondered how I had the audacity to basically teach people how to hit a golf ball without actually having done 20 years practicing golf myself. So I explained it, and they took me into the company, and they were working with the Russians, and the Russians were looking to redevelop, and phenomenal scientists, and they were doing a mentoring scheme. And I was invited to go out and look at this scheme. And when I went out, I just said, I think the scheme is fantastic, but the people themselves are so full of their own importance that they'll never develop. And then I introduced them to the golf, and they thought that was a great idea. And they let me get out alive, which was great. So it was a great bonus. And they invite me back every year for a couple of times to take all their top scientists and top people and reintroduce them to the art of performance management, coaching, and all that type of stuff. And golf plays the predominant part.
Wow, that's interesting. How do you get the language, forgetting about all the other parts, which in itself must be lots of challenges, but how do you get over the sort of language issues? Because does that really slow things down? Or because a lot of the people you're interacting with, is English almost a bit of a second language?
Well, it's interesting because to get on the program I run, each of the scientists or the senior individuals has 3 separate degrees, of which at least one of them must be a first. So just to tell you, English is absolutely the language that they use when working internationally. So there's absolutely no problem. My Russian's pretty rubbish, but their English, thankfully, is very good.
Yeah.
But of course, the nice thing, Rupert, I actually had a bunch of Russians who couldn't speak any English, but the golf ball doesn't lie. So to be quite honest, as long as they do what I ask them to do by hitting the golf ball and they get the result, so, they jump up and down and laugh the same as we do.
Yeah.
So absolutely fantastic. So it doesn't really matter about the language. I believe that in the UK as well, you can talk to people. You may as well be speaking double Dutch. As long as you get the result, that's all you're interested in.
Yeah, no, that's right. If Alex Wren has joined us on the call today, with his previous involvement with IBM, when he had about 5,000 people reporting to him, he was sharing a story with us about how he was invited over to Russia, and he actually strayed out of territory for a while, and he got very sternly told off. And there is someone else who we know was also on this show actually just a few weeks ago, and had rather a different experience. It's almost like a potential Salisbury incident, which didn't quite happen, fortunately. Anyway, obviously it's fantastic. I suppose the good thing with that is at least you're in a position to be able to influence a little bit and bring a bit of goodness to the world, to hope too, with what you're doing. So you must get a real...
Well, hopefully, yes, hopefully. Let's see. As long as I keep coming out, I'm fine.
They're lovely. Now, obviously, returning to the topic, remove the doing to make the impossible possible. That's a real oxymoron, isn't it? Mm. And I play with that, with our own expression, because we talk about bringing sales forward, giving your time back. And obviously, it's a play on Back to the Future, hence the part of it. But tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Well, I'm going to give an example of this. COVID is a great example for most of us. The learnings within COVID are phenomenal if we take the time to stop and learn. So I'll keep this very broad so we can't identify any company or people. But working with a particular company, like most companies, they require interaction with third parties. In this case, this would be a pharma company. I'll keep it just broad as that. And like most of us, they go into COVID totally unprepared. Suddenly, the face-to-face interactions dry up. People are very used to jumping in their car. They're rewarded for jumping in a car, traveling 2 hours, for having a meeting lasting 20 minutes, half an hour, maybe an hour if they're lucky, and then driving back, and that's the day's work. And that's accepted by both the pharma company and the reps and what have you. And that's the model that has been predominant for about 35 years. I'm just using that as an arbitrary figure, by the way. What's sad to understand is that it's taken COVID to realize that in most of those people, the results, and this is the frightening thing, the results that they've achieved from COVID, in most cases through those clients, that interaction, has actually stayed the same, in some cases improved, in few cases gone down slightly, with no input whatsoever by the rep. That basically says that the death of a rep is with us. In other words, the rep really, if you analyze that, has had no impact whatsoever during a 9-month period.
Right.
Therefore, you could safely say, if I was a pharma company, hang on, why am I paying cars, expenses, hospitality, hotels, and all the other bits and pieces? Because what we're actually proving here is not necessarily the foundation work, but the work thereafter actually is having little or no impact. But the frustration and the angst for the reps and the people who are doing it is massive, because they're now seeing the same and thinking, what do I do? How do I impact on those particular clients? Right. Now, if you take that as base value, what we're looking at the moment is that leads on to the next challenge, which is, are managers really managing, or are managers just recycling the same old shit that's been around for 40 years pre-COVID? And then you ask a manager, what's your new strategy for COVID? And they go, well, it's probably more of the same and get people to relax and this, that, and the other. In other words, they don't know. So what's been fascinating is to look at all this in one big pot and say, like most of us, we don't know what we don't know.
No.
So then I start saying to managers and the reps alike and people, it doesn't have to be pharma, it can be any company at all, whether it's making motor cars or whatever. And, I was talking to a chairman the other day and he said, well, the problem, Michael, with these large, stores that are going to liquidation and what have you, of which he was chairman of one of them, says, the problem was we just weren't good at the online resource bit, the online bit. And I think so. Therefore, you're basically saying that you actually weren't very good at your job.
Right. Wow. No, it's interesting with this as well, because you only need to look at the news at the moment. Forget about COVID and all that stuff for a moment. And you look at, see, someone like Philip Green. Now, we've all got our own opinions of what, Philip Green.
Yes.
But interestingly enough, has he become a dinosaur? Is he a large part of the problem with, so these big retail outlets? For example, they've got 2 or 3, like, is it Top Shop and the others,
Top
which
Shop.
are doing well.
Yeah.
But other parts, so they just not adapted to the model. Have they not adapted their times? In fact, I always go a bit further and say, well, actually, is Philip Green also a large part of the problem in terms of he's actually damaging the brand? So,
well, you said something, Rupert, there was interesting. They said have become, are now. You probably go back about 4 or 6 years, and the answer was they were then. The problem is that has anyone picked that up?
Yeah.
And it's all very well for chairman and people to go on news and say, well, the problem is, but is that not what they were paid for?
Yeah.
To actually identify those problems before they became a problem, or as they were a problem, to fix them.
Yeah.
Now, it's very easy to fling stones at people, fabulous businesses. Debenhams are going for 240 odd years, must have been doing something right. Philip Green must have been doing something right, etc., etc. So I'm not here to knock people. What I'm here to do is open people's eyes to where and what we should do now. And COVID has just given us a perfect platform.
Yeah.
If we keep recycling the same old thought process when it comes to engaging with people, selling to people, communicating with people, communicating with ourselves, well, we're just going to get the same.
Yeah.
And therefore, where's the new toolbox for people, whether you're a rep or whether you're a salesperson, whether you're managing director, sales director, whatever, where's the new toolbox? Where's the new set of tools? So hence the getting out of your own way and the 3 brains principle actually comes into that. Trying to give some people something that makes the difference.
Yeah, no, lovely. Leads in, I was going to ask you a bit more about getting out of your own way and what's meant by that, but also how you can take that stage further and learn how to communicate to massively improve business performance. Could you expand a little bit on those 2 points, if that's okay?
Yeah, just to come back, just slightly come back, if I may. Yeah, the communication process is really important, as is the getting out of the way, and I'll explain a little bit more about that. But I just want to come back to one other part, just very briefly, and that was the propensity for people to use the word team. I believe you have to qualify to be a team, otherwise you're just a group. The majority of companies and places I go to, people talk teams as though this was some magic. And when I ask them to show me what makes their team the top team, they have no idea. It's just a bunch of people who have been working together. So I have a great belief in self-managed teams that really communicate with each other at an amazingly high level, show good vulnerability and all the rest of it. Moving on from that, we talk about getting out of our own way. If you look at the three brains that I believe we have, we've got the thinking brain, we've got the doing brain, and that's the one we spend a lot of time and money and effort into the doing part. And then we've got the being brain, which is the being. Now, my philosophy, quite simply, is to remove the doing brain so we can actually be.
Actually be?
Yes, we can actually be the being brain straight away.
Right. So what do you mean by that?
Right. If you go back to your parents would always say, don't over promote yourself. Whatever you do, just take it steady. Put in the hard graft, the 6 meters of cloth and what have you. And one day, my son, you will eventually be this. Well tried and tested. So you think about it, you act it. You think about it, you train for it, you go and do it. And then lo and behold, one day it arrives and there you are. Now, there's nothing wrong with that philosophy, except I think it's out of date. What about if we could actually miss out the middle part? What about if I could encourage you to think the thoughts, that's create the mental strategy, suspend the doing bit for the moment, and put a lot of effort to start with in the believing and behaving bit, then support laterally by the doing bit. So we're getting out of our own way in the doing bit. Would that actually impact on your performance and on your business?
Right. Wow. And I suppose this is an example. You obviously have already shared some examples of how that's impacted companies already. Around that particular point, I mean, one of the things which we come across a lot is people where they, in effect, they get into the role of almost self-sabotage. It doesn't really matter whether it's a self-sabotage over picking up the phone because you actually don't really like speaking to potential customers that much, or perhaps you're an introvert and you really struggle, or you've got a lack of confidence. But also it could be self-sabotage because it could be repeating patterns of behavior which can go back for a very long period of time. How do you identify some of those parts around self-sabotage, and how do you break out of that as well, if I can put it that way?
Well, I think the fastest way, and we talk about speed dating here, is to accept that we all sabotage ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
A whole new discussion point is, what was the causation of that? You know, was it you were dropped in the head as a kid, you know, wore short trousers for too long at school, or were ridiculed, or whatever? And the answer is it doesn't matter. I think the important thing is we just accept that we all have self-limiting traits which stop us performing. And therefore, that's where the thinking and the behaving bit comes in. So if I could use my golf as an example, what right have I got to take a novice golfer and pit them against somebody who's played golf and is capable of driving 280 meters with a driver? And I take somebody who's never played golf, including myself, and I create an environment and I remove the doing bit, that's the technical bit, the understanding bit, and I just work on the thinking and the behaving, and I get them to at least perform, and in most cases outperform the golfer who's played golf to his own paradigm limitations over 20 years.
Wow, that's really interesting. And what is some? I've just taken
a young driver and used the same principle in Formula 4. And he's just been taken on by the Formula 1 team now as probably the next Lewis Hamilton. But we've actually done exactly the same, but this time not golf, this time in terms of driving a car. And up until 2 weeks ago, he'd never driven a single-seater car. He'd only driven a go-kart.
What?
Yeah, and it's taking away the doing part and getting people to do the thinking part, which is the thought strategy, getting out of their own way, to then believing that they are that person, that they are that successful, and then bringing the doing bit round the back door, because we've all got to do certain things. We can't sit at home and not pick up the phone. But the important bit is to do the bits before that, which is getting out of your own way, which is the doing part. So to answer your question, yeah, we all have limitations. We have belief limitations. And many others which just stop us from performing.
Yeah, wow. Are you allowed to share the person involved, or is it confidential? Is it something you're discussing?
At the moment, it's confidential, but hopefully in the coming weeks and months, it should be quite public, because he is just a superstar. Yes.
Yeah. So when you're comfortable to share, I'd love to know more, actually. And no doubt our viewers or listeners here today would love to know as well. But I mean, that's sort of, again, an amazing story, isn't it? And obviously we talk a lot, we spoke a lot about the three brains, and I'm absolutely fascinated by this. I just wish I was any good at what you do, but I'm not. Hence you've got people like you who are the experts. So
you are. That's the interesting thing about it. That's a wonderful default. It's a humble default mechanism, but it actually doesn't do you any good.
Yes, well, perhaps I shouldn't do that then.
Not a criticism, just an observation. Yeah, we all love to put ourselves down. It's a form of, support, isn't it? It means that we don't fall too far. If we take the mickey out of ourselves, we learn that as a young child. If we knock ourselves, then other people can't knock us quite as badly.
No, quite.
What was interesting, you were talking about Philip Green there. Philip Green is a master at the thought process. which then becomes the other part. So whether you like him or not, good, bad, and different, whether he's a positive or rogue, I'm really not interested. What's interesting is that he too, from very, very humble beginnings, has used very similar, whether he knows it, likes it or not, and that's quite fascinating. When we get into the psychology of real performance, especially in this day and age, and we just remove the doing bit, we spend so much money teaching the doing part. Golfers make a profession out of it. Golf pros are in business doing that because they teach all the bad habits for 20 years. And that's how they make great money. And my view is you can do it in 20 minutes.
Wow. Yes, that's really interesting. And obviously, one of the points we're going to discuss was about how to boost your belief system to maximize business performance, behave to become. Obviously, we've already talked about that to a degree, but what other parts would you like to add around that, particularly around this whole area around maximize business performance, behaving to become? I love that phrase.
Yeah, behaving to become really is the process of imagining the impossible, dreaming the dream. And if you ask somebody to dream the impossible, to imagine the impossible, majority of people will never even have gone there. Right. They don't believe they're good enough. They don't believe they have the competencies. They don't believe that they, God willing, well, why me? If you can actually get people to dream the dream, assuming that everything was going to be put at their fingertips, that's their abilities, their silver tongue, Rupert, all the rest, absolutely anything that you require to achieve what you believe is impossible. If you get people to go to that first stage, that is an amazingly empowering part of the belief system.
Right.
Now, the question is, Michael, I've got this fabulous dream. Now I've just got to believe that I'm worthy enough. And that's an interesting word, isn't it? Worthy. Because what stops most people achieving is the worthiness bit. What stops people picking up the phone is, am I worthy to speak to the other person? Am I one down? When we actually have a dream and a belief that we have already achieved the result before we've even started out, then ultimately we're accessing a different part of our brain.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And it's one of the things I know we spoke about before, but I think it's very relevant to this conversation. In a moment, I'll bring Chris in, because I know Chris is going to love to ask you a couple of questions as well. But previously, you've talked about how to use decoys to break free and take back control. What examples of decoys can you use in a situation very similar to what we've described here, in terms of remove the doing to make the impossible possible?
Yes, I mean, understanding what a decoy is. A decoy is a physical or a mental process that you would involve yourself in to break away from the paradigm that you're locked into and the part of the brain that you're using. So the best way to describe it is that we're taking a novice in terms of the racing driver, for example, the young man. He believed that he would find it difficult going to a single-seated car, and there was a couple of corners that he'd been told were very difficult. So we're now programming him into everything being difficult. So I suggested to him that he should scream when he went into the corners and imagine going through the corner and just wiping himself out on the corner. Go through that process. And once he'd gone through that process, he became quite comfortable with it.
Right, wow.
And it no longer became the ceiling, it became the floor. Now, that's very, very good. The golf, I would often get somebody to hold a golf club and to get them to move into a different part of the brain. The first thing I need to do with them is to get them to shout out as loud as they can, Sunningdale or wherever they are, and use a nice swear word as they hit the ball. Yeah. And of course, they laugh. And by laughing, we lose the limitations. We go into a different part of our brain, and they hit the ball like they wouldn't believe. And again, closing your eyes is another decoy, because you can't see what you're doing. You just have to trust your brain. So you can think of sometimes in COVID, I'd look out, it's a sunny day, and I would decoy myself and say, I'm going to give myself 32 minutes and 45 seconds to achieve something. And the precision was in the 32 minutes 45. And I'd compacted it because I have a theory. I do most of my businesses. I've proven that I've given people 4 hours on a complex solution and they fail. And I've given them 40 minutes and they succeed.
Mm. And why is that? I mean, what is some of the key triggers that cause you to achieve the impossible in a ridiculously short amount of time when it perhaps would take normally?
Yeah, I think most people would agree with that. Give busy people, give lack of time. You have to use a different part of your brain. You have to think differently. I do the same with teams. It's fantastic to watch a team where you give a complex opportunity to that they might normally take 3 or 4 hours to actually come up with a solution, and you give them something like 35 minutes.
Wow.
And it's quite amazing. And they all behave and act in a totally different way. There's a lot more fun. It's a form of decoy. You're actually playing around with a different process. That's why I hate the word manager, because managers manage, which means they automatically link back into previous behaviors. Therefore, they link people into paradigms. And that's why I say to people, don't ever ask a why question. Always ask what questions, because why questions are rooted back into a different part of your brain. And the solution that comes out of why is not nearly as powerful as the solution that comes out of what, because it's a different part of your brain.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you very much. Well, I think at this point, I'd love to bring in Chris, and so he's got a few questions that he'd love to ask you. Just a second, if I can press this magic button. There we go. Chris, welcome back. So, over to you, Chris. I know you've got some really good questions. Actually, got no audio. I think you might be muted. So,
I'm only taking easy questions tonight, Chris. Only easy questions tonight.
Okay. Well, I'll see what comes through me rather than what's planned here. But I suppose the things that are coming through me that I want to ask you is, firstly, is the success through your work more about the suggestions that you give to people or the questions that you ask them? So is this a hypnotherapy type process where it's almost meditative? So, I sense with you sometimes when I listen to you, I don't always follow everything you say, but I do notice a change. And so there's something working on the subconscious level as well as the conscious level. So are you utilizing hypnotherapy type techniques with your clients, or are you actually asking them beautiful questions which then inspire a change response?
Nice.
I think the answer to that, truthfully, Chris, is yes.
Okay. So
yeah.
Okay. And
let me explain that. Yeah.
And therefore, you promise your clients massive returns on investment from your work, and I'm interested. Are there any self-coaching questions or self-coaching suggestions that you would recommend people give themselves that will help them on that journey if for some reason they can't afford your services or whatever, but is there some recommendation you can give, some direction on maybe how to do a little bit of this yourself?
Yes, I mean, first and foremost, a bit of background there. I studied hypnosis to a very high level, and I use it every day, every moment, all the time. So don't look at me like that, because you'll never be the same again, Chris. The important bit is, yes, I will use it unconsciously. I cannot help it now. I often say to people, if I walk into a bar and I want a free beer, I will use my hypnotic response and get a free beer. It is powerful. Hypnosis, there is no such thing. It's a form of communication. It's a very high level of communication, which is appropriate. And I said, yes, because yes, I will use language to its greatest advantage. But I will also use expectation, you call it coaching language and what have you, to actually get people to expect and move themselves down that road. But both, yes is the answer to that question, very openly and honestly, because it is communicating to the correct part of the brain and using that part to its best advantage is where we get this massive performance. Now, the question you asked is, what can people do if they're not using me? Just make sure that people are thinking and behaving and miss out the do bit. So in other words, get them to think as though they were already there, get them to behave like they were already there, and then bring the doing bit after that in line with the behavior. So I always say to people, what would he do in that situation? What would so-and-so do? You know, they're very successful. What would they do? What questions would they ask? So you're almost bypassing yourself. Does that make sense? I hope that appeals.
It's a bit like Napoleon Hill. If you would Think and Grow Rich, when he's there in his mind, he's got Abraham Lincoln, Henry Ford sitting in his virtual board, and he's imagining asking questions and imagining their response, and using this virtual board.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Now, what I don't want to do is I don't want people to think this is Mystic Meg stuff and and tea leaves and all the rest of it. This is what I call advanced communication. When we get this right, we know that drivers drive better, people fly better, people do better business, better relationships, better everything. And the problem is, the harder we try to make things work, most of us continuously practice our mistakes. We continuously practice our flaws. That's not a negative thing. It's just, that's life. And what our job is to break people away from doing what they know doesn't work.
Yeah, that's what
the job is.
Another question I want to ask you, linked into this conversation, and you talked about giving teams 14 minutes or rather than 4 hours, and is should we spend more time on this in terms of allocation of time? And I might be into doing now, but around, we're talking about thinking, and we should spend time thinking and time being. Should we then be allocating, when we are doing and getting things, should we be allocating much less time to do it, almost like an hourglass, to get those tasks done, such that we become highly productive, but also, I suppose, through the thinking and being, we understand the place and importance of those on the journey. I don't know.
Yeah, very much so. Two things we can do, Chris, there. One is we can cut our timescales of achievement, the doing part, down phenomenally. Again, imagining you had the best brains in the country around sorting this task out, what would they do? And the second thing is, in the process of doing that, is to utilize your other time, as it were, to watch yourself doing it, to think about how you could do it differently, and not deliberate just doing the same old that you've done before.
Yeah. Probably about in the summer, I remember I had 3 coaching clients, and I thought I better do some preparation for these clients. And rather than looking at their background information, taking people logically going through things, looking at where we're in the program, what I did, and it may have been inspired by talking to you, actually, Michael, was I remember sitting in the back of my house. I put myself into a bit of a meditative state, and I literally went with my gut feel of what was coming through with each of those clients around what was important to do with them the next day. And things came up. So one of the things that came up, you must explore this person's mother. No idea why, and then something else came from the second, came from the third. Took me 20 minutes to do that, get into that meditative state, rather than maybe I could have spent a couple of hours thinking it through. The following day, I ask about a mother. It gets to the absolute nut as to why her behavior is like it is. And then the same happened with the second, same happened with the third. I cut that prep down to 20 minutes by going into that, getting the conscious mind out of the way, really. Is that the kind of technique you would recommend with people?
Spot on, Chris. People do that. They come to me for an hour and a half or 2 hours. The other day, I did a session which lasted 7 minutes, and the client went, "Wow!" And I said, "That's it. Goodbye. Speak to you next month."
I love it.
Why not? They got the result. It was 7 minutes. That's great. Speed coaching, call it what you want. We spend far too much time just spending time.
Yeah.
What a waste of time.
We measure our services often.
Too much time.
A lot of people measure services on time given. So, I'm going to do, 2-hour coaching session, or you're going to get, 3 full days or whatever it is. And they measure it on that rather than value.
Yeah. I want to get out of there with it. If I can do 7 minutes, that's fantastic. Yeah. And you're right. What you did was intuitive. I had a lady today, fantastic, very senior lady, and what have you. Intuitively, I just said, "So when did you first know that you'd left yourself behind?" And she just said, "Wow, wow." She said, "Well, I suppose when somebody said to me, 'Never mind, you can do some Irish dancing to get that weight off.' And then I became bulimic." So that's interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
And she said, "No, how on earth did you know all that?" I said, "I didn't, you just told me."
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. I'd just come in there if it's all right. Muriel, be ready just to go through the chat in just a moment, because it'd be nice to pick up a few comments in just a moment, and we'll bring you in. Sorry to interrupt you, Chris. Are you asking anything else, Chris? Or is that... have you got
no, I just think there's something in what Michael says about this, this intuitive questioning and listening to your inner self. I remember last week a question with a client just flowed through me, which was something they were really struggling with, and I said, is it delivering more value in your life, or is it delivering you more noise and dysfunction in your life? And that was, suddenly with them it was like that, and then suddenly it became clear for them the answer to their solution. But I didn't think that through. It came through me, really.
And that's getting out of your own way, isn't it? That's exactly what this is all about. Yeah. Get out of your own way to perform with thinking and behaving, not the doing part.
Yes.
That's really interesting. I love this point you made a bit earlier on, Michael, as well, because it's interesting, because we ran our mini conference this week, which is like, it's a mammoth session. It actually starts at sort of 1:30, 15-minute break, and it finishes at 5:30, which was a lot of fun. But of course, you have to do a lot of preparation for it. And I set myself an impossible goal, and I think I've managed to do it with about 2 or 3 minutes to spare. And I've been working on it for quite some time, over 3 or 4 days. And actually today, because there's been a massive amount of conversations, lovely conversations had with people today and yesterday, I then have found myself in very tight time to be able to get ready for this program today. But actually, again, because you knew you had to work to a very tight deadline, one way or another, you just made it happen. So I do love this point about setting yourself sometimes what seems to be impossible goals, and actually just making sure you achieve them. There is obviously an element of risk with that. You do actually screw up big time and end up by running out of time. But actually, I've found invariably that's when I and probably many other people perform at their best. So no, I think it's been... Sorry, Chris.
The thing I found that really helpful from one of my interviews, someone talked to me about actually the holiday time. The day before you go on a holiday, you just get blistered. I mean, there's so many things done, don't you? And just achieved and out the way. And if you turn every day into behaving like it's you go on a holiday the following day, the amount of things you can shift through and fly through and get onto the important matters, it can double, treble. So I just thought that was quite interesting. Think about holiday every day, the day before you go on a holiday.
Yeah. No, lovely. Well, thank you, Muriel. We've got about 2 or 3 minutes, then we need to start to wrap up and just need to explain what next, as it were. So, but Muriel, so feeding in from some questions or comments from the chat, have you got a few questions, comments you'd like to pick out particularly?
Actually, I was just about to say we've had none at all. I think Michael's hypnotised everybody. I've just got 1 or 2 coming through now. Okay, so this is Daniel Kenning. I was taught in a presentation technique course that the best presentation is made in 10 minutes.
Well, it'll be interesting, that one. But I think Nikki's made a few comments as well.
Just as a little point.
No, Nikki was trying to help Charlotte out with a Facebook issue.
Can I just add something to that? I know a Hollywood film sort of pitcher. He has pitched the most amazing movies, films, blockbusters, and he became the most successful sort of producer in Hollywood. And he was telling me that one of the things he did, was he would go in with a 10-minute pitch, whereas everyone else will go in with 2 hours, maybe even 3 hours, and he'd kind of blow them away in 10 minutes with the methodology that he has. And he became the most successful, wealthy producer in Hollywood as a consequence. So you get everybody's attention within that 10 minutes, and then get out and get them to make a decision. So I agree. I think there was something about that 10 minutes, about shorter time, as Michael was saying, rather than longer.
Yeah, I think that presumably what Daniel's talking about there is also in terms of pitching as well. Sometimes it's also about sharing massive amounts of value with all of this too, isn't it? So that's really good.
Right? I think the hypnosis is wearing off now, because they're coming through thick and fast. Okay, Nikki, I agree with the being not doing aspect. It's something that she does with her clients too. We are human beings, not human doings. Like it. Yeah.
And I think Alex is making some comments there as well.
Okay, if you take the young driver moving from junior into single-seater, motorsport is a true team sport. How are the rest of the lads' teams being encouraged to reinforce the thinking being approach?
Yeah, what's your thoughts, Sir Michael, on that one?
Sorry, I didn't catch it all. Can you say it again, please, Muriel? Sorry.
I can, but my glasses are a bit weak. If you take the young driver moving from junior into single-seater, motorsport is a true team sport. How are the rest of the lads' team being encouraged to reinforce the thinking / being approach?
It's a very, very valid point. We're now back into the role of teams, because an individual themselves, the team is what really is going to make the big difference. At this precise moment, I'm not involved in that. Hopefully I will. But the team that's around him at the moment actually spend a huge amount of time at deliberating on exactly what we're talking about today. So, there is the technical aspect, there's the car and the engineering. But these Formula One teams, they spend a lot of time, looking at the psychological aspect. I think recently the Rugby Union England World Cup were all sent to the SAS training grounds to really understand how a team performs. Chris, we've talked about this before in some of the extreme stuff that you've done. And I think that's where it comes from. So yes, teams have to go through the same thinking process to support the individual.
Yeah. Lovely. Well, thank you very much. I think what we better do is we better start to just go through the final part of the day, and obviously I think we've all benefited greatly from Michael's insights, and also what Chris has very kindly said as well. But let me just bring this up. There we go. So next week's session, Chris and I are actually just finalising on this at the moment, so some of the points for discussion may actually change between now and next week. So we're just trying to wrap this up. Chris and I were going to try and speak before the session today, but I think you had a very big delivery turn up a bit before this.
I'd be to share what this will be about. So basically what we'll do is I do on Friday my 400th hour of my podcast tomorrow. And I've been doing this for 10 years, my 10th year, and amassed, I guess, a huge amount of experience. I don't know anyone else actually who's been doing this for so long. I've probably had over 400 guests on the show, and it's accessed in over 50 countries. So I'm going to share why you might want to do this, and why you certainly might not want to, because you might be other things that you're actually better and more suited to. I'm going to tell you what it really means in terms of the amount of effort and energy it takes to do it and maintain it, and the discipline that you need. We'll talk a bit about how to position your show if you're going to do it, who you're going to position it to, the benefits that you can achieve from it, both less tangible than money sometimes, and money. Also, I'll share with you some of my secrets on how to structure a great podcast or a great interview, and we'll also talk about maybe a little bit about sort of platforms you can use and how you can stand out. So those will be sort of key components of next week's interview. And any questions you've got, anyone you know is interested in podcasting, bring them along. I don't do this very often. I've been asked to do this at sort of national level at the conferences for the Professional Speaking Association and people like that. I'm happy to share my tips, warts and all. How do you get the best guests? Those sorts of things too.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Well, there we go. We've got, we'll obviously update this to reflect what Chris has very kindly shared just now. Now, to get in the true Christmas spirit, obviously, I think a number of you have seen the notification went round today by email, but also those of you who were on the networking collaboration session last week would be familiar with this. I'll go into a little bit more detail in a moment. But in 2 weeks' time today, it's really, we're going to have it more as a Christmas special. So it's what's now for Christmas in 2021. And we're going to have some virtual mince pies and mulled wine to go with it. What we plan to do is to actually invite a number of guests in that day. Now, we are limited to 10 people, actually bringing people on into the green room, as it were, then on stage. So it may be a little bit of carnage, but it's going to be lots of fun. But it's really going to be a really relaxed session where we all get together. But it's particularly from a more serious point of view, we're going to be really talk about the insights that we've all learned from this last year and what we believe is going to actually happen next year and what we should be planning for. So it's going to be a lot of fun, but that's in 2 weeks' time. So moving on a little bit now, just to give you a bit of an update in terms of things, with the networking collaboration sessions, as I talked about a little bit last week and also reinforced by email today, and we're going to take a little bit of a break from those between now and Christmas, and they're going to revert to a monthly format for the networking collaboration sessions, and they will be on the second Thursday of every month, immediately before the live stream like we're doing now. So it'll be a very similar format to what you're familiar with before. What we'd like you to all do is think a lot more about people you can introduce, because bear in mind, all the success of this is actually down to not only what we do, and Chris also volunteering his time as well, and Mira obviously working very hard behind the scenes to make sure things happen. But it's actually what you guys can do as well. So I think what's very easy to do, we can get all a little bit comfortable. And I know several of you actually been very proactive. I think Pradeep's been very proactive, one or two others. But there's some others of you which actually could be a lot more supportive in terms of people that you could introduce as guests. And this is what's going to make the networking collaboration special. So we're going to run those monthly rather than weekly. The live streams will continue as they are. You know, at the end of the day, we've got a fantastic number of guests coming in from week to week. Michael's very kindly shared lots of value today, as we recognise, and that's obviously become a regular occurrence with Chris's help and support. So just a little bit of insight on as far as that's concerned. One of the things that we'll be sort of focusing a lot next year on, as part of the mini conference we did that this week on Tuesday, but we're going to be into a lot more detail on that as part of the next mini conference, which is on January the 5th, the same time periods. But what we're going to be doing is bringing much more in the way of guests in as well. And it's going to be focused really around these three key areas. And obviously, with that, we're going to be obviously discussing market insights, which will be discussed around the Christmas show as well as the live stream. And obviously, we will be with some bonus content around LinkedIn, and obviously from Chris's insights, our discussion we're having around the podcast as well. That's going to feed in really well into that too. So that's something to look for on the 5th. You're very welcome to register for that as well. Now, obviously, it is intended more for people who are new into Business Growth Bureau. But in reality, I noticed there are a number of you who actually like to keep on joining us. And, please do, because each time it's about positive reinforcement, we're all learning new things. And the way that you can register for these is very simple. If you go to the homepage of our website, you can register for the collaboration events and live streams that way, and also for the mini conference and also the on-demand webinar. So now we'll just mention our website. This is one of the things I've slightly run out of time for. Our website on the page to do with the networking collaboration and the events needs a few updates. I'll be working on this over this weekend. Also, our calendar system, which sends reminders out, needs a little bit of an update. So hence Mural reached out to a number of people today, and also we sent those emails out. So obviously come in very much a way of sharing value. I'm very grateful as well for the amount of discussion, collaboration that goes on, the goodwill. I've just seen, for example, Nikki and Charlotte, we haven't picked those out because it wasn't really relevant to the topic today. But I think what's really nice, there's a lot of you are actually really keen to actually act in a very supportive role of others. And we're creating this fantastic community. So I'm very grateful for you taking part. So basically, just look at how you can. We recognise that it is a very lonely journey out there, whether you're a company of 1 or 100. If you're joining us via Facebook, if you could very kindly like and share the page, that's another way you can really help us to increase the audience here. If you're on YouTube, if you could make sure you subscribe to the channel, but also share it. I think you could hit that bell. I think you can say as well. So do that. That really helps us to expand the audience and make it more exciting for everyone. And Michael's contact details are there. Actually, I'm sorry, I've left one website link I didn't mean to change. Michael, at the moment, I don't think, because I know you do a lot through LinkedIn and your reputation, you currently don't have a website. Is that correct, or am I missing something on that?
Sorry, Rupert, I missed that last bit. Say it again, please.
So sorry, just to confirm, is there a URL where you want us to mention for you today for your inside out part of it? Obviously, I know you're very active on LinkedIn. We're doing a lot with you on that. But is there like?
Yes.
Can you just tell everyone what that is?
So tell you a little bit more about. Sorry, yeah, Rupert, I'm missing that last.
Breaking up a little bit. I just wanted to check whether you've now got a website at the moment, or whether people mainly find you through LinkedIn that way.
Okay. Yeah, people can either get me by email, through LinkedIn, through my mobile, whatever. I would imagine that information is available. Please reach out. I'd love to share ideas, thoughts, and what have you. If I can help you, I will. Just pick up the phone, LinkedIn, do whatever you need to do, make reference to today or last time I spoke, whatever, and I'll certainly do what I can to give as much as I can.
Yeah, lovely. For those who are already members and clients of Business Growth Bureau, by the way, you'll probably see a lot more of Michael through different shapes of form as well. So it's going to be exciting. But Michael's mobile number's on the screen, and also your email address there as well. So the bottom line is, I think today's been a great session. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and hopefully everyone else has as well. Any sort of closing thoughts from Chris first? Do you want to go first? You got any closing?
I always love hearing from Michael, and I think just you're thinking differently. I think doing the thinking piece, doing the being, and getting out of the doing out of the way. I think just makes an awful lot of sense. There's real wisdom in that. I just also noted, I mentioned this Honywood producer. His name's Brant Pinvidic. He has a book called The 3-Minute Rule: Say Less to Get More from Any Pitch or Presentation. It's got 110 5-star ratings on Amazon. It is a really good book. He's probably got some great friends too, I would imagine, to get that many 5-star ratings. But he's a sort of class act. There's an interview I've got on my in my archive on the Business Elevation show with him. But it's a book worth having in the library. But yeah, brilliant. Well done, Michael. Always great.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Can you just repeat the name of that book and the person's name again? Or can you put it in the chat?
Pinvidic, so BRANT Pinvidic, Pinvidic, and it's called the 3-Minute Rule.
Right. So no doubt found on Audible as well as Amazon, as well as the bookstore.
Yeah. He talked to me about, I saw him. He talked to me about having a TV show and said a show, and he said, it's not expensive. We could easily set this up for you. It turns out it's about $500,000 to do one, but to him it wasn't expensive. To me, that was a bit of money.
Okay. So, Muriel, what your thoughts from today? What insights have you picked up from today?
Well, with Michael, I could listen to you for hours and hours. You've just got this relaxing voice that is so interesting.
Thank you.
Pardon?
Hypnotic.
Sorry, what did you say, Rupert? Yeah, hypnotic. My brain is a bit confused. My brain is a bit confused, but I'm not sure which brain is confused. Maybe it's all three of them. But that's why you do what you do, and you're the expert. Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah,
thank you very much. Yeah, confusion I think is great, isn't it? It's a state we should be in more. Utter confusion, because then the best comes out. Now, all I say to people is be lucky, think lucky. And as Chris has said there, everything is just relative, whether it's money or whatever. You just got to think your way past it.
Yeah.
And it'll all happen. So good luck, everyone. Whatever you're doing, just think differently and get out of your own way.
Yeah, lovely. I love it. I got to pay attention.
And they say confusion always precedes great clarity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Michael. I've personally really enjoyed today. I've seen Mike Gee, by the way. We've missed you today, but hopefully we've answered your questions as part of the discussion. Michael, thank you ever so much for today. If you could very kindly stay on for a couple of minutes, because we'd love to have a catch up with you. But thank you very much, everyone else. And we will see you next week, and also for the Christmas special in 2 weeks' time. So be ready. So take care.
Bye.
Thank you for inviting me. Bye-bye.